A linking reaction to Dr. George Tiller, the assassinated abortionist in Kansas, to the Fort Hood massacre. Here now, Ms. Coulter, whose book Guilty, Liberal Victims and Their Assault on America is out in paperback this week. Okay, so I wanted you on here, plug your book and the Tiller thing, because I was deeply involved in that. They blame me for Tiller's death.
Right.
Really far out loons. But what does Tiller have to do with Fort Hood?
Well, I was just comparing the quotes. Immediately after Tiller's death, Obama said, "I am shocked and outraged by the murder of George Tiller." So the victim in that case was George Tiller. When the crazed Muslim shoots up an army base, he leaps out and says, "Don't jump to any conclusions," because he doesn't want us jumping to the obvious conclusion while liberals go to work manufacturing all the counterintuitive conclusions, which they have been pressing upon Americans for the past week, which is stress, stress, stress. That's all you've been getting from American newspapers.
Let's walk through it, because I find this fascinating.
You're getting the truth from the British newspapers. That's how we found out about him, contacting Al-Qaeda. That's how we found out about his
The British press is ahead on the story.
How he was praying with the 9/11
I got a lot of questions for you. Tiller was the victim. He's dead. Somebody shot him dead, and it shouldn't have happened in America. So Obama wasn't wrong there. Tiller was a victim. But the point that he was loath to condemn Hassan seems to me to be a play that he didn't want Muslim Americans under any pressure.
Right, precisely. That's the comparison. In this case, the Muslim is the victim. Why? Because
I don't think he made Hassan the victim. He didn't want other American Muslims who are good people to be the targets of hatred.
Right, but that's crazy. You didn't have him jumping out and saying, "No, don't be mean to the anti-abortion people." Why? Because we have a pantheon of victims. To get ahead in America, you have to be a victim. This Fort Hood thing is the apotheosis of my book, which is this victimology in America. And it was not until 9/11 that Muslims became the #1 preeminent victims. That's why the Army did not react when this guy...
That's a very interesting thing. So you believe that Muslims, not only American Muslims, but Muslims the world over, are perceived by the left as being victims of the jihad.
The #1 victims. That's why the Army didn't... This guy...
Oh, obviously Hassan, he should have been flagged. Obviously.
Okay, but I just have to raise my favorite warning sign. He's supposed to be speaking at a medical conference at Walter Reed, and his conference is on the Quran. He says that infidels have to be beheaded and have oil poured down their throats.
Yeah, look, there's no doubt the Army booted this one.
By the way, it's not covered under Obamacare. At Walter Reed, it's a medical conference. The doctors are calling this in, and they don't do anything. Why don't they do anything? Because he's a Muslim.
Right,
because if you are a victim in America, you have doors open for you. You have privilege.
You can get away with a lot more.
You can commit murder, and as apparently Hassan has. And what happens? The media rushes to say,
I was just going to ask you about the media. Did you see the little collage we put together?
Yes. In fact, I think I saw most of them in the original.
Okay. What drives that? What drives? Look, I have no animus toward Muslims at all. I've been to a dozen Muslim countries. I've always been treated well. All right? I want American Muslims to have a happy life. I don't want anybody to be doing anything to them. However, I'm going to call the guy what he is. He's a terrorist. He's a Muslim terrorist, and he killed people because of jihad. Now, all the people you saw, Schieffer, Roberts, all the rest of them, down, they won't do that. Why won't they do that?
Because they're victims. We have a caste system in America with different levels of victimhood. You have the feminists, gays, blacks, Jews, but the #1 victims, but only starting on 9/11 when they killed 3,000 Americans, became Muslims. And all we hear about is how a bumper sticker was scraped off this guy's car. That's the first story out of Fort Hood.
No, he had post-traumatic stress disorder.
Well, it was pre-traumatic stress disorder since he hadn't been sent overseas. He had the first recorded case of pre-traumatic stress.
You missed that, Coulter. He caught it. He caught it because he was talking to people who had it. So it's contagious.
Okay, I have one even better for you.
It's airborne. It's an airborne thing now.
Okay, on their pre-traumatic stress syndrome, that's what everybody kept saying. Oh, he's talking to people coming home. I just read in the New York Times yesterday, he wasn't counseling them when they came home. He was counseling them before they were sent overseas, even on their crazy theory.
Whatever it was, he caught it. It's contagious now, post-traumatic. And we're not diminishing the disease; it is real. But this is
not when
this is so much
been
BS.
Sent anyplace.
Right? It's crazy.
I'm getting pre-traumatic stress syndrome from listening to all of the stress discussions.
Now, it's my theory.
So watch out.
My theory, based on the ratings last night and last week for the coverage, which Fox News is dominating.
Right.
That people are fed up with this excuse making for terrorists. They're angry, and I'm not sure how it's going to play out with Barack Obama.
I think this is the mainstream media has embarrassed itself. I can't remember when it has behaved this way. I mean, it really is stunning. I was calling one of my friends who isn't on a computer and doesn't buy the New York Times, reading him every day after the attack, the massacre. It wasn't a tragedy, by the way. Reading him the headlines of the New York Times about, how difficult it is for Muslims in the military and stress in the military. Nothing about what a lot of us concluded when they heard he was giving medical lectures on beheading infidels and pouring oil down their throats. It has just been stunning. CNN, the LA Times, the clips you showed. And meanwhile, all of the relevant facts are coming out from the London Telegraph.
All right. And Coulter, everybody, provocative as always. Thank you. And plenty more ahead as the Factor moves along this evening. New York State